Hey everyone, it's Josh. Before we get into today's episode, just wanted to announce that we are doing a live show in April, and we would love to see you there. It's on Thursday, April 27 at Caveat. The show is called The Worst of All Possible Worlds Presents Brian is Back, the 85th episode podcast spectacular, live from New York City. If you can make it in person, tickets are $15 in advance, $20 on the door. And if you can't make it in person, there's a live stream. Tickets are $10 for that. And if you're a Patreon subscriber, you can get $5 off. So for more details about that, go to worstpossible.world. That's our website. All the details are there. And we hope to see you there. On to the show.
AJ, you know about St. Augustine, right?
Yeah.
Like you've read.
Yeah, of course I know St. Augustine.
Confessions Part 2.
Yeah.
These are my confessions.
Yeah, when I was in high school, our rival high school, I went to Cathedral Catholic High School, and our rival high school was called Saints, but it was short for St. Augustine. And that was our big football rivalry, but the whole thing.
Did they steal all your pears?
No.
That one's for the heads. I like the idea of a school that actually specializes in saints. Like, it makes me think about the Colorado College of Mines, which is just called Mines as shorthand.
Yeah. Wait, did you say mines or mimes?
Mines with an N.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a school that reveled in walking against the wind.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast walking against the wind since the year 2020. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians. And today we're...
Oh, he's
Brian
doing
Brian
mime.
is miming.
He's just doing mime. You have to edit this.
That's
you know
great.
that, right?
This is such good content for an audio-only podcast.
Yeah,
Really good,
it was
Brian.
a very pornographic miming session.
It really
There
was.
not another
I was
person
very
there, and all of
impressed
my
by the
clothes were
amount
on.
of ejaculate you were managed to mime.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Illusion. All just in isolation.
Wow.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Well, speaking of ejaculations, we're here for another installment of Wit's Endless Summer.
Wait a minute, what?
Springs a Witkening, as we like to call it. And particularly, we're
The
here.
defeat in our voices.
Yeah, well, because here's the thing. We are full of ejaculate, because today, it's a lot of odysseys about daddies, baby.
That's like we've covered nearly 100 episodes,
Which
and
is
there's
insane.
still so many gaps.
It's insane. But for those of you who are just joining us for the first time with this ongoing sub-series, The Worst of All Possible Worlds, Adventures in Odyssey, an evangelical Christian children's radio drama produced by Focus on the Family, the virulently homophobic Christian evangelical organization based in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
But to be fair, the gays are graffitiing Wit's End all the time.
That's true. They are.
Yeah.
Both on the show and in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that episode where Larry Kramer went to Odyssey was a big one.
You fucking imagine. Focus on the Family also hates the New York Times, but for very different reasons. These episodes are about dads. And Brian, you pulled together really quite an assemblage of episodes for this one. Why don't you tell us about sort of the through line and why you chose these?
Well, so the main through line here is that we have to talk about George. We gotta go perchance to George. We gotta know, where did you go, George? We know that George is near. We saw his eyes. They said that you were at the zoo, George, drawing the monkey cage. So George Barkley is now in his series of unfortunate events.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say to our listeners, as we're coming up to the return of the devious Dutchman, Regis Blackard, Esquire, Doctor, PhD, MDD, DDS. We don't get to go on the Hawaii vacation with George Barkley and the Rathbones. I'm sorry to anyone who was waiting for that. Maybe we'll do it as a bonus episode someday.
Yeah, that feels like a solid piece of Bobus content.
Is that Aloha Oi?
Aloha Oi parts 1, 2, and get this, 3. The thing that I want to focus on with George this year is all of the shit that happens to him, because it turns out to be a lot. And so I thought, what better way to do this than to focus on the concept of fatherhood in general. This allows us to learn a little bit more about Connie and meet her dad, Bill. And it allows us to learn about Lawrence, who's going to be important in a little bit. Not that important. Also Rusty from the Bones of Wrath.
Yes.
Who will be important. The Bones, that is. Not Rusty so much.
And then I needed to bring in, of course, our favorite orphan, Eugene Meltsner, and introduce him to everyone's father.
Yes, the big daddy upstairs.
Our Lord, yes. Our heavenly Lord and Father.
But also through his own surrogate father, John Avery Whittaker.
That's a really good point.
Yes.
So the first episode that we listened to as part of the sequence is episode 195, Father's Day.
Yep.
And this episode is one that I actually do remember from listening to it as a kid. It's a pretty, tightly, for Phil Lollar at least, tightly written slice of life kind of piece of narration.
Yeah, I was surprised this wasn't a McCusker, honestly.
I was too. I looked it up halfway through.
3 of the 4 episodes this week are Lollar's.
Yeah.
And honestly, the worst one this week is a McCusker.
Yeah, it was really wild. Look, I hate that we have to hand it to him, but he wrote some good scripts. Yeah. But I mean, it's also maybe...
You got to get somewhere after you've written 200 of these things.
Yeah.
One would hope.
And I think what was so striking to me about these particular episodes that he wrote were how little God features into like any of them, really.
Yes.
This is where we're starting to find that tone that Odyssey is going to really master when Paul Herlinger is with.
Yeah, these are more...
It can't come soon enough.
These are moral lessons that are not always explicitly or overtly Christian. At least until Chris, of course, comes in at the end and does her,
Tries to find a Bible verse.
The Bible says. But,
the thing I always think about wildly is like Chris has to sit there for the entirety of these episodes and just listen to them and then pipe in like at the very, very end. It's wild. Let her come in late. Don't make her sit there.
This episode begins with Connie going through, I think, like a catalog, right? Of like stuff she could be getting for her father.
Oh, hi, Whit.
Hi.
Trying to decide what to get my dad for Father's Day. There are a couple of possibilities in this catalog.
You still get your dad gifts for Father's Day?
Sure.
Piece of
Just
shit.
because he and my mom are
Dumbass.
divorced doesn't mean that he still isn't my dad.
Oh, I didn't mean to imply that he isn't, Connie. I mean, speaking as a dad myself, it's nice to know that you're thinking of him. Can I ask you a personal question, though?
Sure. I've asked you enough of them.
Does it still bother you the way your dad left your mom?
No, not really. Since I finally realized that I might as well accept it and get on with life.
Oh, I think that's a very wise attitude.
Yeah.
He goes in for the kill right
he's
away.
like trying to start something.
He's
Connie's
her
like very
boss.
mature.
Yeah. And she's like, what, 16, 15, 16?
Yeah.
She's like, I'm doing all right, Whit. And he's like, are you though? What if you hate him? What if you feel really bad about
I have this new game I play. How long does it take me to write the words "stay out of her business" in any episode of Odyssey?
Yeah, this must have been a record breaker for you.
Two notes.
Yeah.
First one, oof, Whit sounds unwell because ooh.
Yeah.
He was not doing timeline wise, Brian. How is Hal Smith's health at this point?
He's got another year and change.
You definitely can hear it in the performance. There's a certain ragged edge to his voice.
Yeah.
And there's also just some real darkness, honestly, that is present in a way that in previous episodes there's not, which I think is really interesting, actually.
This present darkness.
As Connie and Whit are talking, lo and behold, Connie's dad, Bill, enters the shop. He's here. Whoa, what's he doing here at Whit's End? Crazy.
I'm only in town for the night. I'm passing through on my way to New York to visit your grandma.
Then you really didn't come to see me?
Oh, no, not true. I made it a point to stop here. Connie, your grandma isn't doing too well.
She isn't?
No. And I thought it'd be nice for you to come with me to New York to see her and to spend some time with me.
That sounds great. Whit, is it okay if I take the time off?
Well, of course, Connie.
Oh, and I'll have to ask Mom, too.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Seems all right.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be like thunder cracking in the background when the word New York is mentioned. Like the restraint is admirable.
It is interesting, though, that Bill, being this, libidinous guy who, seems to be a little bit of a serial monogamist of sorts.
A real leisure suit Larry.
There you go. The fact that he's from New York, I think, is interesting.
Yeah.
They've made a choice here.
What we've had with Bill before, and of course, AJ, you haven't heard all of these, but like mostly he's been absent. This is the first time we've had a voice actor for Bill. There was a previous episode where Bill is like gonna come to town and then he flakes out. and then Connie turns misandrist.
Oh.
And so she's just like stepping on Eugene's balls for the rest of the episode until Whit's like, now hold on. That's not right.
Hashtag not all men, Connie.
Well, I think I want to post this sort of along maybe on the Twitter or something, but there's only one canonical drawing of Bill Kendall, and it's on the AIO wiki, and it's a nightmare. It's all smushed out. It looks like almost like a Picasso painting. Like,
yeah,
but
it's probably
in
something
hell.
from the corner of some artwork somewhere.
Sure.
Yeah, and his voice has a very calming quality to it, though. Like, he sounds like an old character actor, and I guess his name...
Guess what, AJ?
Yeah?
He is.
Is it really?
Who is he?
No, it's Alan Bergman.
Oh.
He actually played father to a character played by Katie Lee when Focus on the Family was doing family portraits.
Oh, okay.
Weirdly enough.
Wow.
So they decided to bring him back these many years, like 6 years later. He was one of those guys you'd see on TV in the 60s and 70s who would appear like multiple times on a show, but as different characters each time. He was just one of those guys where like every 3 seasons be like, let's get Alan Bergman back on to play this dude.
A real Peter Capaldi of his day.
Yes, he was on Star Trek in the 3rd season episode, The Empath, which is a mostly terrible episode, like, you know, most of 3rd season episodes of Star Trek. But it's an interesting one because it was written by Joyce Musket, a woman who has 0 TV writing credits aside from this episode because she was a fan. Very big deal. And Joyce Musket, first one, good for her. Not a good episode. I don't recommend it.
One and done.
But Alan Bergman is in it.
All right.
That's lovely.
And I think that we should take a moment before we move on in the plot to talk a little bit about Alan Bergman's performance here as Bill, because I think it's an interesting performance, honestly.
It's a very considered, non-judgmental, straightforward performance.
Yeah, and there's so many adult roles on this show. When they want to do a straw man, you know immediately that person is the straw man because
usually they got Phil Lollar to do it.
Right. Yeah.
To write it
or
and to perform
or Dave
it.
Arnold or whoever. Yeah. That's what I mean. Playing the character.
But this feels so lived in that it's like, I don't know if Phil Lollar is a child of divorce, but it does feel like there is a truth and reality to this story that he felt very important to put into the script.
I think the way that we sort of see that is that Bill always is trying to do what he thinks is the right thing.
Yeah.
It's just that he isn't emotionally intelligent enough to like understand the consequences of his actions. And we sort of see examples of this throughout. But the first example that we see here is that, you know, Bill comes in, he's like, oh yeah, you know, let's, you know, Connie, come along with me to New York. Oh, and by the way, as long as I'm here, let's all go out to eat too.
I want to take both of you out to dinner tonight.
That'd be great.
Well, that's very kind of you, Bill, but I'm not sure that would be a good idea.
Oh, Mom, it's just dinner.
Sure. Remember all the great evenings we used to have at Papa Luigi's restaurant up the coast?
Papa
I remember
Luigi's.
when I was little.
Papa Luigi's.
Come on, Mom.
I'm sure we can find a nice Italian restaurant out here.
AJ, did your ears just perk up when you
had the
heard that they were
same
going to do an
question.
Italian thing?
You don't think I've already written the interstitial for this week.
Oh, good.
Immediately upon hearing Papa Luigi's, my computer exploded. I typed so hard on it, it burst into fucking flames. No, this is great. I also love the dynamic between Bill and Whit in this. It has a real like stepfather versus like biological dad vibe. Like Whit's like, I'm the Whit that stepped up.
That stepped up.
I also have this feeling that Papa Luigi's is like they just say like up the coast, but like how far up the coast do we imagine Papa Luigi's to be?
I like the idea that it's in Malibu, that it's just like really, really fucking she.
I was thinking just south of the Oregon border.
Yeah.
Oh, it's way.
You gotta
Welcome
go
to
up Highway
Papa
1.
Luigi's, located in scenic Merced.
I mean, either way, the specter of Papa Luigi has now been raised.
The specter is haunting Europe.
And you know what? He's gonna suck it up with a Poltergust 3000.
He is. Papa Luigi, Mama Luigi, whatever. What we know here is that Connie is geeked. She basically thinks that she's going to be able to parent trap her parents, right? Like,
who needs a twin?
That's the problem, right? If only
I don't
Eugene,
even need to split screen.
If only Eugene was her twin, maybe it would work out. But
and he's definitely not Connie's twin. Definitely not.
Wait, what?
What?
I'm joking.
Oh.
He really isn't. her twin.
I don't know the lore.
I wanted to mess with you, AJ. I just wanted to make you feel something.
I was like, is that why they never kiss?
Yeah. She basically, Connie then talks to it and she's like, have you seen what I've seen, right? Seems like sparks are flying, right? And Whit,
they are absolutely not.
Whit is like, no. He says what in a way that I've never heard Whit say anything before.
What?
So that's one to put in the rotation. So, but Connie still decides to go forward with her plan, right?
Yeah.
She uses a room upstairs at Whit's End. She configures it to look like her memory of Papa Luigi's. She slaps on a fake mustache and, welcomes her parents to the restaurant.
As deserted as the downstairs.
Connie!
Okay, hit it, Eugene.
What in the world?
This reminds me of...
Buonasera, mia bella Pisano. Welcome to Papa Luigi's.
Papa... Connie?
Don't look now, June, but I think our daughter needs a shave.
Connie's doing drag. She's woke.
What is all this?
She's woke,
This
kids.
is Papa Luigi's. Come, I got you a table already.
It's a me,
sit,
Papa Luigi.
Madam.
Well, okay.
Signore.
Well, when in Rome.
Now, how's about we start
that's in
off with
Italy.
a nice glass of vino, eh?
Wine? Where did you get wine?
Don't worry, it's just grape juice. Help yourself to some breadsticks. I'll be right back.
Because remember, this is a Protestant show. We can't have any alcohol.
No, I mean, I'll be honest. I thought this was kind of cute. I liked the setup.
It's fine.
It was sweet.
Oh,
you
I'm
know.
sorry. Is my culture your costume?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, dude.
Connie's costume.
This is blatantly pasta face. And I will not stand for it.
Oh, you're really not going to be happy when you hear about what I'm doing for Halloween
I'm going
this
to
year.
buka you in your Beppo is what I'm going to fucking do.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to have to bleep that one.
I also think this is actually pretty adorable, and I actually really love Connie's delivery of it's just grape juice, don't worry about it. I thought it's like very lived in and lovely. Also, this is a me bit, so I'm gonna be predisposed to it. Slapping on a mustache
sure.
and
Yeah, of
doing,
course.
doing that accent is a very me
You don't
thing.
even have to slap on a mustache. You already have one, but who cares?
Yeah,
I know. Put a mustache on top of it.
Like most of my jokes, it's a mustache on a mustache.
Right.
I also like the okay, hit it, Eugene, because they couldn't get Will Ryan that day.
Yeah, but it's also so in my head, I understand that it's just like he's pushing a button.
It's
but
great.
I do like to imagine that it's just Eugene with an accordion.
Yes,
with
yes.
little,
He's a one-man band,
foot
Dick Van Dyke
symbols.
situation.
Yeah, having to stand in the room for all this.
I mean, it wouldn't be out of the question for Eugene, honestly.
Yeah,
like,
he plays
given,
ukulele. He sings.
He does. He
Yep.
does.
He's got a whole
I mean,
album.
either way, we have, I think, a really clear picture of what this room looks like. And so it ends up getting really sad really fucking quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this scene is that, like, it's maybe not when you're a kid. As an adult, you know what the stakes are going in. You can tell the parents are not thinking about getting back together in any way. Like, it's cringe comedy.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is deeply uncomfortable Michael Scott territory,
Right.
not just because of the pasta face.
Yes.
Although, I mean, that's problematic. And we do call it out. And
I
you know,
don't. Bill has to figure out how to let Connie down easily. He told her earlier that Lindsay, his girlfriend who he had at some point since leaving Connie's mom, he wasn't with her anymore.
Yeah.
Which is part of what animated her to do this whole thing. But then we find out the truth.
You're what?
Married.
Married?
Yes, her name is April.
Married?
Married.
Poor girl.
I'm all right, Mom.
I was talking about April.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Wait a minute. What about Lindsay?
Lindsay.
You know, the one you left Mom for?
Yeah, well, I left her.
Figures.
Let me get this straight. You left Mom for Lindsay, then left Lindsay for April?
No, I left Lindsay for Carol. I left Carol for April.
What?
Oh, at least you married April.
I can't believe it. You did kill the music!
The abruptness, and that's not a cut that we've done. That's
No.
how abruptly it cuts out. It's amazing. But also, I'd like to imagine that, again, Eugene in the room is just playing oblivious to
Just
this the whole
stopped.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, It's beautiful. Mamma mia. I do have to also call out Connie for saying paisano and use that as an opportunity to talk about my own father. He's taken to doing this thing when he like meets people that he's only like he kind of half remembers. He's like, hey, my paisan. And my dad also wears suits that are just like a little too big for him. So he starts to resemble Joe Pesci in a very like real and very enduring way. Anyway, shout out to you, Dad. I know it's not Father's Day, but I love you dearly. So
yeah, it's the Father's Day of March. It's the Julian calendar Father's Day.
There we go. And June, like, really is not missing her opportunity to twist the knife here, and I like that a lot. Because it communicates without having to explicitly be like, your dad is such a frustrating guy, and I'm so mad at him. It's like, no, we can hear it. You know, show me, don't tell me.
She really goes for the throat, I think, at a couple points, but it's all very subtle and like lived in because she's tired. Like, she talks a lot in this episode about how like she's, you know, she's still upset, but she let go of her anger a really long time ago. But then you listen to this, and it's like, I don't know, man.
Your father has always been this way, even when we were married. He'd pull crazy stunts and do incredibly insensitive things, and then he'd wonder why I got mad at him. That's why this doesn't surprise me. I wasn't looking at him or the situation through rose-colored glasses the way you were.
I mean, she's like, this is over for me. It's frustrating that I have to keep him in my life because of you, but like, yeah, I'm just sick of his shit. I don't care.
Yeah, it's lovely. Again, it feels so lived in a way that a lot of Odyssey episodes that Lollar writes feels like he's trying to take on sort of the persona of a different writer, right? Mm-hmm. He's trying to mimic sort of the His Girl Friday banter.
Right, because he also is trying to write with a sensibility that's like 40 years older than he is.
Yeah, or there are times where he's like trying to be McCusker, right? And it seems like he doesn't quite fit into that. But this one feels like a very genuine Lollar episode. And I never thought we'd get that from him. Truly, I did not think he had it in him.
I mean, I think the reason that it does succeed is that he's just allowing the action to sit with the characters. And the characters are, at this point, developed enough that we really know who they are. Part of the problem, I think, with Lollar's writing is that he often has a tendency to, like, take the kid characters and just have them be really fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Whereas in this episode, the stakes are clear, the characters are clear, and although Bill is technically a new character, he doesn't just exist as a device. He's really sharply defined. I mean, a childhood friend of mine, his dad was just kind of this guy. And this is a specific type of guy, and it's a real kind of guy. It's somebody who I think wants to do the right thing, but just doesn't know how, because for whatever reason, they've never developed sort of the level of maturity to allow them to see outside of themselves and truly understand how their actions impact other people. And it's also not a coincidence that people who are like that also have a tendency to, you know, dump the women that they're with the moment that they are no longer new and shiny, right? These are the fucking Leonardo DiCaprios of the world.
Yeah, Phil Lollar is showing respect for these characters. Yeah. Right? In part because, there are no children here, right? There's your regulars and adult characters.
Yes.
And one of the big things, and I've brought this up before, is, right, when June has to give Connie advice, June is not a Christian. That has to remain a clear point, is that, you know, Connie became a Christian. She's the only one in her family who's like that. And so June's advice has to be non-Christian advice, but they're still not making her into a straw woman. They have to give her good advice because you're also supposed to listen to your parents. So this is what they have her say to Connie.
How do you cope?
Well, there's no easy answer to that, but I think the best things are to do what you're supposed to do and realize that life goes on. I know that's not terribly original, but it is true.
Well, I certainly know that life goes on.
Right? Ask anyone else, it would be like, well, you've got to pray about it,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
But June wouldn't say that. So she says, well, do what you're supposed to do, and life goes on.
Yeah. Well, and the episode kind of lands in a strange place after this, too, with its wrap-up, because, like, it can't really square the circle on this, right? Like, Connie is supposed to respect her father because you're supposed to respect your father. But Bill's kind of a piece of shit. The way that we sort of end up dividing this, Well, first of all, Connie meets up with Bill and April actually really likes the socks that Connie was thinking about getting for Bill.
Yeah, and she's a flight attendant. Started out with a one-night stand with Bill. Then he has 30th birthday. Yeah.
And Connie gets this dig in. She goes, well, maybe I'll get them for you for Mother's Day. Get her ass.
April is Bob Luttrell's wife, Lynn.
And then April just kind of goes up to the room to jerk it for a while while Connie and Bill.
What? Wait, no. What?
Yeah. She's like, I'm going to go up to the hotel room. And he's like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, no, I really want to go up to the hotel room. You all just talk down here. I know where I'm not wanted. She goes up to the hotel room and... plays the hits.
What are you talking about?
She goes down to Clamtown.
What are you talking about? Like, what?
She rings the devil's doorbell.
Hold on.
She flicks the Life Fantastic.
Why did you take that away from this? Why was that your takeaway?
Well, I think it's because she clearly went upstairs to give the old meat curtains a slap.
Jesus.
A slap?
Yeah, the slap. The NBC limited series.
Connie, she goes to New York. She sees her grandmother. She hangs out with Bill, presumably in the future, and they decide that they are going to see a show. Yeah. And I was thinking, here it is. It is June of 1992.
It's busting out all over.
It sure is.
It's much
AJ.
like me in that regard.
It sure is. And I was thinking,
much like April in the
Broadway, what Broadway show? Because I don't think they're going off Broadway. They're from Ohio. That's not happening.
Correct.
No. They're not
what
giving out
Broadway show are they going to be seeing?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
For me, the answer it's clearly Cats. Right. This is not. I mean, at this point, Cats is not new. Cats has been running for actually quite a long time, but we're talking about your standard issue tourist from the Midwest. Cats was, I think, the 5th highest grossing show of 1992. It very much still had legs at that time. Yeah, Now and Forever was a thing. Still,
plus Roy Cohn got Bill his tickets. So,
but like Bill is a man of class, Like Bill's a guy. Bill's a sophisticated man, as we can all tell.
Oh, yeah.
He's a normal man. He's an innocent man, He could be taking her to Phantom, He could be taking her to the Secret Garden and see Mandy Patinkin.
I do think the Secret Garden is actually a real possibility.
Good. Take her to see the Secret Garden and see Mandy Patinkin refuse to do a British accent.
There's also, hey, what about falsettos?
No.
No. Or the legendary revival of Guys and Dolls with Nathan Lane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great one.
And Faith Prince? I mean, come on. You're telling me Bill Kendall is going to miss that?
Bill Kendall is not seeing falsettos. That's too avant-garde for that,
Let's also remember, we've got the Will Rogers Follies, which has Cy Coleman songs in it.
Sure does.
There's Miss Saigon.
Oh, there
is
a
helicopter that sometimes works.
They saw Miss Saigon. They saw Miss Saigon.
Okay, but then I also have to raise this for you guys. All these are musicals. What about the plays?
What about the plays?
What about the linchpin of the American dramatic arts?
Something
maybe they go see something by Tennessee Williams. Maybe perhaps that something is A Streetcar Named Desire, starring Alec Baldwin.
Oh yeah,
as Stanley Kowalski.
Wait, Alec Baldwin was Stanley on Broadway?
He absolutely was, which is Stealing Polish Valor. They could be seeing Death and the Maiden with Richard Dreyfuss and Gene Hackman.
I genuinely have no idea what that is.
Directed by Mike Nichols.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
We like him. We like Mike.
Maybe they're seeing, back on the musical side, perhaps Five Guys Named Mo. Or Jelly's Last Jam.
Maybe Jelly's Last Jam. I hope they aren't seeing Five Guys Named Mo. And I definitely hope they aren't seeing Crazy for You.
That choreography is great.
They could be seeing the Roundabout Theater Company revival of The Visit by Friedrich Dürrenmatt.
They could. But they're probably not.
They couldn't see The Visit. It was already closed by June, but I needed to put that in there.
Oh, of course.
So I think my vote actually is for Miss Saigon. That to me feels probable.
I think it's a toss-up between Miss Saigon and Cats, just because I think April will be really into Cats.
I feel like as a divorced man, Bill Kendall is going to be like, hey, do you remember that book you really liked when you were 3, The Secret Garden? That like your mom read to you.
Interesting.
Yeah. What if we saw The Secret Garden? And then Connie's like, this is boring as fuck.
And then April would go up to her hotel room and explore her secret garden. So,
Lord. AJ,
Gonna
you doing
eat from
okay,
the
man?
apple of the tree. I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. All right, so we find ourselves. Yeah, I think y'all are skipping over the detail that Bill for his breakfast orders a tall glass of tomato juice, which is absolutely unhinged behavior.
Well, that's what you do when you're an alcoholic.
I
mean,
didn't
it's not
catch
quite a Bloody
that.
Mary, but yeah.
Okay,
Without the
so
hair
there's
of the
something in
dog.
that tomato juice. I see.
And I did need to bring this up. Oh fuck, I did need to. I forgot about this. Connie says that she's going to arrange Bill's flight to New York. Bill has totally handled his trip to Ohio from California.
Yes.
Right.
But now Connie's gonna get his trip taken care of because she says she does it for Whit all the time.
Yes!
Connie is Whit's travel agent.
I took that note.
What the
took that
What
note.
is happening? What is that shit?
Is she just his assistant? I mean, she has to be, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's not
yeah.
like that's not in her
Why
job
wouldn't
description.
Eugene be the one doing that?
That's
He's
true.
so much more orderly.
You
he'd
will
love
miss your
that.
connection if Connie is the one booking your flight.
Yeah,
like
but Eugene's probably not great on the phone.
sure. They
Connie,
didn't
why
have
do
the
I have a
internet yet, so-
layover in Tokyo?
I thought you wanted to see the cherry blossoms.
You know how I feel about the Pacific, Connie.
Like I said, the episode really lands in a strange place. Chris comes in and does her whole fucking thing. She's like, it'd be nice if there was an easy answer, but there isn't. It's like, okay,
Which,
thanks,
good
Chris.
for her. That's growth
She's-
on Chris's
Hey,
part.
she's not wrong, but
She
of
says,
course
gives the divorce to Jesus.
we do want to give the divorce to Jesus. We do want to pray.
Yeah, we want to lift it up.
This show is never comfortable sitting in a place of narrative or moral ambiguity. There always has to be this like, well, just, Jesus,
Yeah.
dude, he'll take care of it. Because as we know, Christian families never get divorced.
No.
Oh, wow, that is true. I honestly, I'd forgotten that Connie's parents did not convert with her because it does
Nope.
kind of feel
Yeah.
like a contagion on this
Yeah.
show in a very real way.
Our next episode is episode 230, Our Father.
This is the second album where they went with a theme.
Right.
Where they were like thinking about the tapes that were going to get released and then they did 12 episodes that fit a theme.
Right.
So previously there was Meanwhile in Another Part of Town where everything was narrated. Right. You remember hearing those. You're like,
that
why
one
the
is
fuck is
so
there a narrator
weird,
going
yeah.
on? They did that for 12 episodes. And this one is 12 episodes all going along the Lord's Prayer. So the first episode is Our Father, second one, Who Art in Heaven. We've heard a couple from this already. I have spaced them out a little bit because it's pretty Barkley heavy.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's also very Phil Lollar heavy. Here we are where these next three episodes are all from that album.
And at the beginning of this episode, it's baseball, motherfucker. This is just for me. And now I'm going to do the thing that is more characteristic of Brian and say, at the beginning of this episode, we have a baseball commentator named Van Scuddy and a baseball commentator named Port Rosser. Now, you might hear that and you might just think, okay, those are silly names, right? Well, this is an oddly specific reference to actual LA Dodger baseball.
Oh, shit.
Van Scuddy is a reference to Vin Scully, who was the voice of the Dodgers for like 65
is.
years.
I can imitate Vin Scully. That's from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And see, I heard Scuddy and I was just like, well, that's just a Dutch name. That's just some Dutch guy.
No, Van Scuddy is just Vin Scully, and it's a very bad attempt at doing his thing from the voice actor. And then Port Rosser, well, you know who the color guy was for the last decade or two decades ish of Vin Scully's career. It was a man named Ross Porter. So, Port Rosser. So,
Porco Rosso.
I will say Vin Scully, one of the best to ever do it. Definitely go back and listen to that call of Sandy Koufax's Perfect Game. It's fucking amazing. So
This episode decides to do a Secret Life of Walter Mitty thing. Where we're following the young child Lawrence's flights of fancy, and it bugged the shit out of me, so I did not clip it.
It's really annoying.
So Lawrence is a character that we met back when Jimmy was going through puberty.
Yeah.
And Lawrence was like, I'm a young kid and let's play games in the treehouse that is called Wonderworld, and in the deep lore of the show was built by our own young Mr. Dig Willow, and I did not subject AJ to that episode.
Double D.
Last episode was one that we switched around with this one, and I forgot how much continuity there was, and I'm like, oh fuck, it doesn't matter. But Lawrence is also the one who later on has the whole thing with Jimmy's game, but doesn't actually because it's simulated Lawrence.
It's all in the room of consequences. Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's not a real Lawrence. It's the Lawrence that's a program, but Whit is talking to the programs while Jimmy is just doing something else.
He's comatose in the corner.
Simulated Lawrence breaks Jimmy's Bible Game Boy.
Nose bleeding, eyes rolling in the back of his head.
Guys, I am so mad I was not there for the episode because that had some of the weirdest shit. Sodom and Gomorrah.
Wild, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Lawrence, everything that he is doing here is a reflection of his mental state around something that's happening. So like here he is, you know, it's bottom of the ninth, full count, etc. He needs to hit the home run to get the walk off for the Dodgers. What's going on in real life is he's invited his dad to come to his Little League game. And he's imagining what it would be like to have, you know, his dad cheering him on in that way. But his dad is like, nope, can't make it. We get a one-sided phone call there. And he says, strike three, you're out. Lawrence says that. And I was actually kind of...
His dad is Robin Williams in Hook.
I was kind of sad that then Lawrence imagined striking out in the bottom of the ninth inning for the Dodgers. That was a bummer.
Okay, so here's the thing. I genuinely really like this episode. I really like how weird and different it is from most episodes of Odyssey that we've listened to. I feel like it was pretty adventurous in its structure. The fact that we were like so
it was adventurous in Odyssey.
Yeah, well, that we were so in Lawrence's head, and that we did follow all this stuff, and it was a very much a show don't tell, which is again is very. Very weird for Lollar because it's not like we hear the other side of the phone call, right? We just hear his disappointment and we know that his dad is canceled on him.
Similarly in the next thing, well, actually, it's not similarly. I don't know what the fuck is happening in the next part where he is imagining being a secret agent who is in a spy submarine that has been shrunk down and implanted inside the president.
It's the Fantastic Voyage, Josh.
Oh, sure. Listen, my only note here was that all of the sound effects were also used in the original XCOM, and I just thought that was kind of funny. But he ends up over at George Barkley's house, the house of the Barkley family, who remember the Barkleys, that's our all-American family. They're the stand-in. If you are the standard white middle-class family listening to this on road trips for 10 fucking years in the car, getting this goddamn shit blasted into your fucking brain, and now it's just there, and it never wants to leave.
Like a small child implanted inside of you.
The Barkleys are, supposed to be the family that you empathize with here.
Dad, they finally set a date for the father-son baseball clinic.
That's great, Jimmy.
Can we still go?
When is it?
In 2 weeks.
Hey, then you better get that application in right away.
Yeah.
Wow, can I go?
Well, Lawrence, this is a father-son clinic.
Yeah, Lawrence, you'd ask your dad.
Oh.
I love going to the baseball clinic with my dad.
Same.
I love it when there's clinics for baseball.
I mean, was this a thing that either of you?
I don't think so.
I played
No.
baseball as a kid, and then I very famously stopped playing baseball as a kid.
There weren't enough Pokemon cards in the world.
No. I mean, no, there wasn't. No, but that was also because, have I told this story before about how I got allergies and why I left baseball?
Were you allergic to the baseball?
No, I was allergic.
Were you allergic to baseballs?
I was allergic to pollen in the grass, and because here's what happened when you played Little League. I don't know if this is the case across the board, but if you were bad at
I
it,
only did soccer.
they put you in the outfield. And the outfield is where the grass is.
Where the grass is.
And so I was bad, and I was put out there, and my eyes basically would swell shut. And so, first of all, no one at that level of Little League is hitting the ball to the outfield. No one has the power to do it. But when they would, I wouldn't be able to see the ball because my eyes were fucking swelled shut.
Right.
I left baseball pretty early on, much to the chagrin of my mom, who is a huge Dodgers fan.
Oh, so you did grow up listening to Vin Scully on the radio.
We listened to the Padres. There was a guy who would go, "Oh, doctor," was like his sort of catchphrase. So we had our own version of that. Oh. But I know Vin Scully from Hank Azaria's impression of him on The Simpsons.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
And of course, the baseball team in The Simpsons is what?
The Astros? No. The Atomic?
No.
Fuck.
Oh, yeah, what is it?
The Isotopes.
Yeah. That's right.
Do you know why I know that?
Why?
Because Albuquerque in 2002, maybe it was just 2000, they changed the name of their team from the Dukes, which I thought was very clever because it's the Duke of Albuquerque, whatever, to the Isotopes.
Oh, hell yeah.
There's actually a bunch of jokes in The Simpsons from around that time about Albuquerque stealing their name.
That's great.
We made the atomic bomb here.
It's sort of like how in Midland, Michigan, the mascot is, I think, the Mechists or the Mechanists?
Mechanists? Mechanics?
It's something to do with
machinists.
It's something to do with DuPont Chemical. It's the Chemics. That's what it is. The Chemics.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
Wow. I would just call it the poisoned water supply.
Yeah, I mean, look, Midland is the most depressing place I've ever been in the world. But that can go if you want.
I'm keeping it. But we're talking about this because like this episode does not have a whole lot going on. But it also kind of does, because then he gets recruited into a gang by Rusty.
Yes.
Rusty, this new Bone of Wrath character. Of course, Rodney Rathbone has the Bones of Wrath. And so Rusty is, in this episode, apparently his name is Rusty Malone. His name ends up being Rusty Gordon later on.
Rusty interrupts Lawrence as he is attempting to build Dadenstein, or I guess Dadenstein's monster.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
What keeps your dad away from you?
He's working.
Bingo! My dad's always working too. You think he's got time for me? I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
Get that bird out of here!
Listen to other people's
That's a very loud
conversations.
bird.
No skin off my nose. I just thought you might be interested in something that's a little better than a dad.
What?
Membership in the Bones of Wrath.
And right as he does it, you can hear the thunder starting to crack. And it's just like after this, it's just a storm is brewing here.
That bird was so loud that it reminded me of the cicadas in Evangelion. And I'm like, Lawrence doesn't not have Shinji vibes? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just Rusty climbs up to the treehouse and he and Lawrence stare at each other for 45 seconds uninterrupted with no dialogue.
As the bird screams in the background.
But, you know, for Lawrence, this is an appealing proposition, right?
Yeah.
He finally has the opportunity to become part of something bigger than himself.
Oh, and Rusty, I want to say, Rusty is played by Sean Svoboda. I think this is the first instance of a Czech-American actor on Adventures in Odyssey.
Any noteworthy credits, or is it just that?
No, he's not an actor anymore.
Lawrence returns home, and his mom notices that he's acting a little bit differently.
Lawrence, breakfast is almost ready.
Hiya, baby cakes.
Baby cakes?
Oh, boy.
Lawrence, don't call me that.
Okay, Toots.
Don't call me that either.
What should I call yous?
How about Mom?
This scene goes on much longer.
Oh, it's so long.
Interminable.
And he's talking like, I guess, Bugsy Malone is what they're aiming for. He's just a little greaseball now because he's joined a gang of other 6-year-olds. Like,
yeah, but it's also like your brain has been trained up to this point to like view a lot of this stuff as fantasy sequences. And if this were a fantasy sequence, I'd be like, okay, that seems harmless and fine. But this is like
he is picturing
gang?
himself as like the Goodfellas.
I mean, I think what they're trying to do is kind of like the Calvin and Hobbes thing, right? Where, what Calvin is experiencing in his mind and his world is different from what his mother is perceiving to be happening, right? And this feels kind of like that. I also, can you hit us real quick, Brian, with the music cue that opens this scene?
Yeah, the way that we let in.
Just want to hear that. What the fuck is that?
That's a cartoon cat looking into the camera and slowly raising his arms as in a
what can you do?
It's just a mess. I wanted to mention Maureen Hodges here for a moment, the mom of Lawrence. She is played by Janet Waldo. Janet Waldo is going to be a major actor later on because she's going to play Joanne Allen.
Oh, right.
I can't believe we found her.
Yeah, that's true.
Janet Waldo is, by the way, that is a name that might be ringing a bell for you.
Because she was Judy Jetson.
Oh, shit.
For like decades. She was also a recurring actor on Ozzie and Harriet, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, a very, very long running 50s, 60s era sitcom. She died in 2016 at the age of 97. She was also married to Robert E. Lee. Yes, that one. The one you're thinking of right now. The famous American playwright.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Robert E. Lee, the playwright, he collaborated with Jerome Lawrence.
Oh.
They actually kind of were some of the founding members of like Armed Forces Radio going into World War II.
Oh.
They wrote Anti-Mame and adapted it into the musical Mame. And they probably most famously wrote the play Inherit the Wind, about the Scopes monkey trial.
Lawrence leaves and George comes over to the house to talk to Lawrence's mom about this father-son trip. And he's like, hey, I know Lawrence's dad isn't around a lot. If he wants to come on the trip with us, with me and Jimmy.
Yeah, there's this interesting level of like self-awareness that you don't really see in Adventures in Odyssey that much, where George was like, probably right after Lawrence left, was like, what did I just do? Oh my God, no, oh God.
Yeah.
That's really, I bet I made that kid feel terrible. So he comes over like a gentleman and he's like, hey, does Lawrence want to come along with Jimmy and me to the clinic? The clinic for baseball.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The baseball clinic for dads and sons.
So it is weird, right?
Why is it a clinic?
Also,
why isn't it just an event?
I also feel like if it's going to be a father-son clinic, something like tennis would be a lot more appropriate. Baseball is just such a strange choice for something like that.
Yeah.
So the reason that Lawrence isn't home is that he's actually out there getting initiated into the Bones of Wrath.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're making him like cut his wrist.
Yeah.
Oh God.
No.
He has to make the blood sacrifice so that he can summon Shulman.
The worst they do, the Bones, is they steal apples that don't belong to them.
At least it's not pears. Yeah, so while this is happening, Jimmy comes by and he's like, hey, Lawrence, want to play catch? He has no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
I guess he kind of knows Rusty and thinks that kid kind of sucks. Mm-hmm. And then Rusty's like, no. And Lawrence is like, yeah, I don't want to play catch with you because catch is for sissies. And so then Jimmy gets into a big sissy fight with the other guys.
Look, Jimmy, catch is for sissies.
Says who?
Says me.
Well, I guess you'd know better than anyone, wouldn't you?
You calling me a sissy?
Well, if the dress fits.
Come on, Barkley.
Damn.
Jimmy did a problematic. Jimmy did a
that's
transphobia.
problematic. That's problematic.
Yeah,
We're
it's
canceled.
the one time this show has been problematic.
We are calling Jimmy Barkley out, frankly. If we were feeling more sympathetic, we might call him in. But this is a case where we really feel that we have to call him out. He did a no-go.
He did in public. You know, it's got to be reckoned with in public.
Public actions require public call-outs. So Lawrence has a choice to make now, right? He can either choose going to the baseball clinic with Jimmy and George, or he can choose to join the Bones of Wrath. But joining the Bones of Wrath, of course, requires that he do something for his initiation. And in this case, the initiation act is to smash flower pots. And these flower pots belong to the Barkley family.
And this show, because they've been doing this Walter Mitty thing this whole time, they sort of make it seem like he's not entirely lucid or sane when he breaks the flower pots. He's just like, I'm driving a spaceship.
Like, he landed the ship. He's like running around shooting stuff with his gun. He's taking incoming from like an artillery gun that the enemy is firing at him. Lawrence's mom, I actually really kind of liked this. Like, she's fucking beside herself, as would be expected.
Yeah, I didn't clip it because she's beside herself mostly in the background.
Yeah,
they do a really interesting foreground background thing because you know what she's going to say.
Right.
So then it becomes a conversation between Jimmy and George while she is yelling at Lawrence in the background. So we have these sort of two layers of action. But the gist here, right, is kids need a dad.
Yeah.
If they don't have enough dad, they're going to be gang.
You need more dad.
If they do be gang, then they know dad have not anymore. New gang dad, not Jesus being dad on the dad of the dad.
And this is interesting too, because, it points to Focus's diagnosis of the problem that maybe isn't wrong exactly, but it definitely isn't right either. I talked a bit about this when I went on Mammonberg like a week or so ago. Focus on the Family diagnoses things like, say, gangs and the proliferation of gangs as being primarily an issue of the collapse of the traditional nuclear family, male role models, things of that nature, without considering, oh, wait, why are all of those dads missing? And the situation that Lawrence is in is that his dad is missing because he's a workaholic, basically, and also travels for work. And so
a truck driver or something.
Who knows? But the reality of the situation is that something like this, as it exists in the real world, is inexorably tied to how the criminal justice system works. But Focus on the Family isn't ready for that conversation. They're not going to have it. And if you go to their policy website, you're not going to find a single fucking word about criminal justice reform or anything like that because they fundamentally don't have a structural material approach to the problem. They just think it's like, well, if there were more dads, we'd be fine.
But even like the idea of structural approaches, though, remember, there used to be a goofy police officer character on this show until James Dobson made them remove him from every episode where he had appeared before.
Right.
So they do have a structural critique, and their structural idea is that more cops need to be in place.
Yeah, that's
more
true.
arrests, more incarceration. We need to trust our police. We love our police. We love the FBI. We love the FBI. We love the FBI.
No, they do keep trying to like reinforce this idea of the nuclear family as being the paramount one to society and all that. But it's amazing how time and time again it proves the shortcomings of that nuclear family. And I don't. I think in the next episode that we'll get to after the break, none more so than when that nuclear family breaks down.
Buenos Aires, listeners. It's me, Luigi, owner and proprietor of Papa Luigi's, located in scenic Merced, California, the Albany of Central California. Listeners, is your marriage on the rocks? Do you look at your partner and see a stranger? Do you crave the joys of eating a big plate of paschetti without the constant fear of ghosts? Then come on down to Papa Luigi's, celebrating our grand reopening after that brief bout of specter based on pleasantness. We have all your favorite Italian dishes: bruschetta, paschette, and limited breadsticks. So come on down to Papa Luigi's and stare in wonder at all of our portraits containing the souls of all the ghosts I sucked up with my vacuum and imprisoned there forever. Several of them are babies. Why are so many of them babies? What happened here? What horrible atrocity was committed at Papa Luigi's that would warrant this many ghost babies? I tried to ask once. There was this large mustachioed chef ghost I caught trying to steal my paschetti around midnight one night. I hit him with my flashlight to stun him, and then I grabbed his tail, I hope, with my vacuum, and let me tell you, he put up quite a fight. Unfortunately, no ghost escapes the judgment of my cume. But then, just before fully breaching my nozzle, I asked him why. Why was this store so haunted by ghosts? And he looked at me and said,
"We are a nuisance to you, a pest to be cast aside, disposed of. But someday, it will be you being sucked into the vacuum, and it is only then that you will know the truth."
What truth?
Oh, Luigi, we are all ghosts. As you are now, so once were we, and we will never forgive you.
So come on down to Papa Luigi's today and enjoy the precious time you have with your loved ones before the inevitability of death. Papa Luigi's, Lego my prego.
So these have been major bummer episodes, frankly.
Yeah, a bit. I mean, we didn't.
And now the mood's going to pick up. It's going to be a lot nicer.
Yeah, exactly.
Now.
I mean, we didn't even mention the fact that Lawrence gets his happy ending, but then Chris turns right around and says, one day, maybe Lawrence's dad will be able to spend time at home with him. And it's like, God.
And Chris reached into the future, and that does not happen. Lawrence's dad does not show up.
Well, she says it in a way that makes it sound like really a passive-aggressive dig. Like, maybe it'll happen, but...
I don't know, this kid's pretty weird.
This kid has bad vibes.
Weird kid, bad vibes.
No, he just won't get in the robot.
Are you telling me Shinji doesn't have bad vibes, AJ? This is the fucking
no,
worst
he just likes me for real.
So let's move on to an episode that deals with, I guess, tough issues, although tries to do it with levity in a kind of weird fucking way.
Yeah, the tone of this one's all over the goddamn place.
Oh my God, is it ever? This is episode 234, Our Daily Bread.
Yeah, they do the classic thing, right, which is like the Steve Martin advice on playwriting, or play acting really, which is that you want to be happy and laughing when you pick up the phone if it's bad news, and you want to be crying when you pick up the phone if it's good news.
Right.
And so here we are. George is like, "Oh man, here I am at outside the office of Mr. Conworth, played by Phil Lollar.
Really makes you think. There's this extended bit about the secretary thinking that George's last name being broccoli, which isn't funny, but I laughed anyway for some reason.
It just made you think of the James Bond movies.
I actually think that's what it was.
Yeah,
I heard broccoli,
Albert Broccoli,
and I started thinking about Cubby and Barbara Broccoli.
But the thing is, like, George, that is George's job. He does make James Bond.
Oh.
That's his at the office. He goes into the office and he makes James Bond.
He's the guy who makes James Bond. Got it.
That's funny because that's actually what Willie Loman sells in Death of a Salesman as well.
It's
James Bond videotapes talking about how like all of the guys who he used to talk to were so sold on buying his film reels, but now that things have moved to VHS, the game just isn't the same as what it used to be, but he's still got it.
Just a whole bunch of film canisters clanking around in his suitcase the whole play.
Hey, listeners, I hope you love Arthur Miller. Yeah, the Barkley family is at home.
Yes.
They're all at home and they're all excited about what George's promotion, because I guess he's been telling them about it this week. Maybe they went to the park with him on, a relatively ordinary
any
Sunday.
Day, potentially. They're speculating on, what is the raise going to be? They're thinking about ways that they're going to spend George's money.
So what's your new title?
Yeah, and how big of a raise did you get?
Jimmy?
Not a very big one, I'm afraid. In fact, I didn't get a raise at all.
What?
Oh, man.
You didn't get the promotion?
No.
Well, didn't you get anything?
Yes. I got laid off. I don't have a job.
George's factory is being closed and moved to the town of Hope, Arkansas.
Yeah. That's not plucked out of thin air.
The weirdest fucking Bill Clinton reference.
Yeah, that's where he's from.
Oh.
You don't know that, AJ? A boy from Hope?
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah. That's why he had all that audacity.
Yeah. This is Phil Lollar being like, well, now that Bill Clinton is president, the economy, am I right?
Wow. Well, and it's really important, right? This is June of 1993, and we are still in that recession that happened at the tail end of the George H.W. Bush administration.
Oh, sure.
Thankfully, a Bush wouldn't cause another recession ever again.
Right. This is one of those things where I was like, this is so specific. Like the writing is rarely, if ever, this targeted toward the adults listening and being like, hey, grown-ups, you sure do fucking hate the libs like us, don't ya?
Remember Slick Willie?
Whatever entertainment I listen to, I have to be like vigorously nodding my head along with it, or I just can't pay attention to it.
Of course.
So this was just a way to like hook them back in.
Donna freaks the fuck out. Right? She starts catastrophizing. And frankly, George is also experiencing anxiety because
George becomes depressed.
Yeah. And he's having some weird dreams.
Do-do-do. There we go. Shirt number 200.
Mom, we're home.
Now, why are you kids home so early?
I actually love
we
this.
got run off by the police again.
Genuinely very unsettled.
They don't like us begging at City Hall.
Well, how much did you get before they ran you off?
Between us, nearly $5.
Not bad. I just finished ironing 200 shirts.
At a nickel a piece? That's $10.
Uh-huh. And as soon as I finish this load of the Wilson's laundry, we'll have another $5.
This is like the beginning of a Kingdom Hearts boss battle music.
The music,
Yeah, but that's got to go to pay off our bills.
You mean we can't buy food again?
It's the bell.
I'm afraid not, sweetheart. Hey, but don't you worry. Your father's bringing home something.
Hey, where is everybody?
Out here, George.
Hey, Dad, how did the hunting go?
The pickings mighty slim out in the park, but I did manage to bag this squirrel.
That looks more like a rat, Dad.
Squirrel, rat, it's meat, ain't it? Fire up the stew pot, Mary. We're gonna eat tonight.
All right.
No, we can't. We can't.
George,
No, the squirrels. Not the squirrels.
Again, there's just like some really kind of fun specificity there.
Like Mary's ironing. It's all like from like the 1910s.
Right, yeah, no, George.
Like he's gotten the varmint rifle.
He's on the
going
Oregon
out shooting
Trail.
possums.
Dude, I'm sorry, how did you pronounce that there, Josh?
Oregon Trail.
It's Oregon.
Pronounce it
sure
either way.
is.
No, it is not. As a West Coast person, it is not.
Yeah.
It is Oregon.
I
It
can
is not
pronounce it.
Oregon.
I can pronounce
you
it that
Aaron
way.
Sorkin character.
I can pronounce it that way, and I do frequently.
But you have to. I mean, I've never met anyone who pronounces. It doesn't matter. I'm abandoning
Oh,
this
it
life.
matters.
I'm
It
abandoning-
matters. We're never going to Oregon. The way that Josh is fucking around like this.
I find it really interesting that his only recourse, this fully grown man, is just like, I either have a job or I eat a squirrel in a park. Do you know what I mean? I think that's There does seem to be a little bit in this episode of me not fully buying that George Barkley wouldn't know what the unemployment office is. Or
I don't know, man. I disagree. I think, it is very plausible that a guy who is this age, who, went into the workforce probably in like the late 70s, early 80s, who was continuously employed the entire time, would suddenly find this to be a completely disorienting experience, because he doesn't literally think he's going to be hunting for varmints. He's having a nightmare about it.
But he does say that he doesn't think he might not ever get a job again.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Because he's got anxiety.
Because Bill Clinton, a Democrat, is in the White House.
That's fair.
Exactly.
That's very, very fair.
With a man in the White House?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I did buy it, even if it was maybe drawn a little bit broadly.
What's interesting is, like, you have to think about, too, the reason why they're trying to write this. Their audience is typically comfortable middle-class people.
Right.
They're probably getting letters. They're probably finding that there's a big part of their, like, wide net donor base that is dropping off right now because of the early 90s recession, because of the savings and loan and all of that nonsense. So they're like, oh, well, we have to do something that's addressing this, is going to be a reality for these like middle-class kids who are listening to our show.
Right.
Yeah. And we still need them to buy tapes.
We do?
Yes.
We desperately need them to buy these tapes.
We need them to keep their parents on the mailing list.
Yeah, well, we get this very lovely scene between Mary and George in bed after he wakes up from this anxiety dream. And they pray together, but it doesn't. But there's so many times in Odyssey where the prayer will come in and I'll be like, oh, this was fucking shoehorned in there.
Yeah,
just so they can get it in.
It's almost like they throw up the little applause sign there.
Yeah,
it's like, here you go.
Pray.
But
they're praying, fucking clap like a seal, motherfucker.
Yeah, but for this episode, I bought it because they're in a dire situation, and this is how people with their faith background would express that. You know what I mean? It feels like it comes from the character as opposed to being shoved down my throat by Focus on the Family.
Yeah, I mean, I have some thoughts about prayer in this context as well. You know, it's always been an interesting thing, particularly in this strain of Christianity, the way that they pray. One of the things that we haven't really talked about on this show, and maybe at some point we will, is this The Prayer of Jabez, which is a very popular book by Bruce Wilkinson. That really fucking, it was a self-help book, basically.
Yeah, so Jabez is a character that appears in the Bible in 2 verses.
Oh, shit.
Like,
okay.
that's it. Like, it's just like nothing. It's just like there was a guy named Jabez. He was named that way because his mother had incredible pain giving birth to him. And so, yeah, Jabez has this extremely short, almost epigrammatic, like haiku poem. That is a prayer.
Like, I want you to expand my horizons, and I want you to enlarge my territory.
Enlarge my border.
And so what Bruce Wilkinson did with this verse was he was like, yeah, what you need to do is you need to pray this every day as your daily affirmation, and you'll get money eventually.
Oh, okay. So it's prosperity gospel stuff.
It's prosperity gospel adjacent. It's like The Secret, but for Christians. This is not quite that, but there is always something interesting to me about, like, the question of, if God has a plan here, and God's plan up until this point was for you to be financially well off, and now you're not financially well off, you need to pray. Well, what about all the people who aren't financially well off? Have they just not prayed hard enough? And this kind of takes us back to the previous thing we were talking about like, well, who is deserving? Who is worthy? If you are in a situation where your child is, let's say, off and running around because dad's not home. If dad's not home for a legitimate reason, that's one thing. But you know what I mean? Like, it all just kind of...
Jimmy is going to join a gang of beggars.
Right. But
and then the plot of M is going to happen.
Right. But this one posits kind of the opposite, right? What if dad's just there all the time? That's also not good, right? That also goes against the traditional nuclear family.
That's true. Yeah, Mr. Mom is not an acceptable model.
And so George just starts getting cucked by his kids and wife on the job market.
Yeah. So Mary's like, I'm gonna start working again. Donna's like, I'll find a job. Jimmy, famously a bad student, he's not good at anything. And he's like, I'm gonna try to get a job. And George is like, yeah, good luck, fat chance.
Yep. Again, remembering, of course, that this is 1992, so single income households with 2 parents were still a thing at this time.
Yeah. Then we get a job montage.
Yeah.
Well, your resume looks really good, George, but I'm afraid we just don't need any more people right now.
I understand, Jim.
We'll keep you in our files, though.
Thanks.
George is such a beta.
That's the most useless scene that's ever been written in anything
Guess what,
ever.
everybody? I got a job today.
All right, way to go.
I was checking out the job board at City Hall when I ran into an old friend. She told me the head of City Parks was looking for a new recreation director, and I went in to talk to him, and he gave me the job. I start tomorrow.
That's great. Right, that's great.
The position involves a lot of computer technology, George. I'm afraid you just don't have that kind of experience.
You mean I'm underqualified?
Yes.
I'm a quick learner.
Sorry.
Mom?
What is Kramer going to get up to next?
Oh, yeah. Well, you won't believe what happened. I just got a job.
That's great, Donna.
Yeah. You're now looking at a part-time stock clerk for Melman's Fashions. And it was the first place I applied, too.
Really? Well, how about that?
Yeah, you'd have to be a useless piece of shit not to get a
How
job.
about it, Dale?
Well, I want to help you out, George, but the Odyssey Times just isn't that big of a newspaper. I can't afford somebody with your experience.
You mean I'm overqualified?
I'm afraid so.
That bass synthesizer is my favorite thing.
Hey, Jimmy.
You'll never
I'm
guess
making a
what just
mockery of
happened.
you, George.
You got a job.
Yeah, how'd you know? I'm gonna deliver papers for the Odyssey Times.
The Odyssey Times. Well, that's great, Jimmy. Just great.
Man. So
George being overqualified for the Odyssey Times never made sense.
That doesn't make any sense at all. I
like, we can't afford you. Okay, hire him for less money. Like, let him determine if he can't be afforded. At
Here's what I will say. I love the fact that John Campbell, composer for the show, was like, guys, I just got this Clavinova. This brand new Yamaha Clavinova, and let me show you all the presets that are available on this motherfucker.
There is something. Okay, so I had a question about the overqualification thing. Is that something either of you have ever run into on any job interview ever, being overqualified for a position?
Anthony, I've never been overqualified for anything.
I'm barely qualified to sit in front of a microphone and talk. I've never had this problem.
Yes. Is the answer for me.
Okay.
A lot of it is just to do when you're in an overqualified situation, it's generally because they know that you can sort of demand more, even if that's not pay, like you'll agree to the pay, but that you would basically have more knowledge or clout or whatever than they are comfortable with somebody having at that level of the org, because they want to stay in control. That's generally what overqualified means in this context.
That's telling us a lot about Dale Jacobs then.
Yeah.
Really. He's a small man.
Yeah.
A small, petty man.
Well, we know that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
This is not news.
That genuinely is kind of the dynamic there. When you talk about being overqualified, it's we could give you this job, but if you were to take it, you would upset the order, and we can't have that.
Yeah, even though this episode spends most of its time upsetting the natural order, right, of things, according to Focus on the Family. The fact that,
and according to you, AJ Diddy.
That's right. Noted advocate of traditional family values.
Yeah,
AJ Diddy.
I needed my families to run on fission or nothing.
Jesus Christ.
You're fired.
Yeah.
You're laid off. Yeah, that was a good, like, because, a kid's not necessarily going to know a term like laid off. And so the show is like, you were fired? No, I was laid off. What's the difference? And George is like, I guess there really isn't one.
Yeah, not really.
I think that's really nice. I will say that the thing about having like the sizzle reel before the episode is that we hear that he's laid off then, and then that scene takes so long.
Yeah, that was a strange choice. They should have picked different clips for the sizzle reel.
And I feel like Odyssey shoots itself in the foot more often than not when it comes to those sizzle reels.
I agree.
They get into a little bit of like how the sausage is made, like making an audio drama in the next episode that we listen to, but this one
sure do.
But in this one, it is really interesting to see the show sort of growing into like an actual like structure that becomes pretty salient, I think, throughout the rest of the run. But
So Mary crunches the numbers Now that everybody has a job except for George, and great news, their combined income will cover the cost. They're going to have to tighten the belt a little bit, but
they can pay their bills.
They can make ends meet. And this creates an absolute crisis of confidence for George.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain, but a job means more to your dad than just a place to earn money. It's a part of who he is. It gives him a sense of identity and self-worth. Without it, he feels like a nobody.
Boy,
I think for the people in our sort of age bracket, this really hits home. Like, this is just what sort of cusping boomer Gen X dads are like.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, my dad, like he thinks of it as like losing his job, but he's in his mid 60s. He does not have a job currently and hasn't for like 5 or 6 months now. And it's been horrible for him.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what to do with that.
It's interesting because, like, as humans, you know, we are defined so much by our jobs that, like, it's our last names. That's where most of our last names come from, right?
Yeah.
Is what our ancestors did, you know?
Your ancestors just made so many ditties.
They did, actually. That's actually true.
The original jingles. For like the local blacksmith or treacleist.
My ancestors were actually minstrels for English kings. They were Northern Irish musicians that would compose short songs for the kings. So we were called
true?
ditties.
You're not doing a bit. This is true.
No, that is not. That is not a bit. That is 100% true. And the curse of the Ditty family is that ever since then, no ditty has had any musical ability whatsoever. We've everything that we've had to learn. Like, we have no like sort of innate like ability to produce music. But it's fascinating to see like that generation specifically. We, I think, as millennials have sort of moved it more that, you know, we're not just defined by what we do, right? We are trying to find a way to be defined as just like have humans with inherent worth, and to feel that way.
We fucking hate our jobs,
right? Yeah,
like,
and we also hate our jobs. I think
in general, like, we don't have the kinds of jobs that people that men of this generation and of this class stature had,
right,
that were like generally fine. You know, you could feel proud of the work that you were doing,
and you were
even
compensated
if you couldn't necessarily
fairly
explain
for it.
Yeah.
Well, and a big piece of, you know, you want to talk about sort of the macro environment here. The Reagan administration, you know, gutting the unions led to a great deal of explosive short-term growth at the expense of the worker. So the economy grew considerably, but ultimately what happened is that jobs got a lot less secure. People got a lot less secure in what their work was. And then, of course, the rise of technology in the 90s pretty much fucking put the nail in the coffin of the idea of a lifelong job.
And a Democrat got elected into the White House.
Yeah, and he's taken all the jobs to Arkansas.
Damn it.
He put all the jobs in his hometown of like 8,000 people.
So it's an interesting situation here where, like, with Lollar, sometimes you really see his politics come through. And this is one of those episodes because the next scene that we get is George going to the unemployment office for the first time. And he sits down next to this fucking guy and they have a wild ass conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I hate being unemployed. I hate having to come down here. On the other hand, I thank God we live in a country that helps people in our situation.
Our situation.
You know, there's something else, too. You see, there's something incredible about being in a position where you're more dependent on God. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm still saluting
the government.
I'm still saluting. I just wanted to point that out. I've been saluting for the entirety of that clip ever since he said, you know, God.
So this might sound extremely fucking foreign to any of the younger people.
Sounded foreign
in
to
our
me,
audience,
frankly.
who don't know this contour of the right-wing perspective.
Yep.
It's the early 90s.
Yep.
It's a different game at this point,
right?
As to like the role that welfare plays, and there is still this idea that it's like, well, we're proud of our civic.
Yep.
Especially unemployment over other kinds of welfare, right? Because you have to be actively looking for a job. It's got all of these caveats to it.
Right.
But like the idea that anyone would say that they're grateful to live in a country that provides welfare at all is still pretty out there considering where the right has ended up these days.
But honestly, I feel like even in the early 2000s, you probably still would have heard a little bit of this. It was the reaction to the Obama administration that put the final nail in the coffin for this particular.
Because Obama was elected, and there we found ourselves in another recession. Right. It seems to happen every time we elect a demon crap.
That's right.
As I like to say, as I like to call them, is what they are, a demon crap.
Yeah, definitely don't look at the failures of, the Treasury under the Bush administration and of that Congress that may or may not have led to the, regulations completely coming off the rails with regard to the banks and things of that nature. That's not that's not the problem.
Sure. We should look really, I think, for all blame to be on the guy who put a factory in a town of 8,000 people in Arkansas.
Yeah, we need to focus on the family. That's what we need to do.
Focus on them. We got to focus on the Barclay machine.
There are no families in Hope, Arkansas.
Yeah. By the way, I think Barclay Machine is like the even more depressing sequel to Hamlet Machine.
Yeah.
So, God ultimately is in control, right? This is where this episode ends up landing. You've got the whole, Chris wraps it up with, look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap, that whole verse. Don't have anxiety about the future because God is in control and he's going to make sure that things don't get too bad, which again raises a question, which is, okay, so what about all of the people for whom things have been intolerable? Did God just not care about them? And this is also the logical impossibility at the core of evangelical Christianity, and honestly Christianity more broadly, but especially this strain of evangelical Christianity where there are plenty of evangelical Christians who get fucked. So it's not even as if coming into the fold is going to be a guarantee of a better future. So what are we even doing here?
Well, we're focusing on the Barclays. We're focusing straight on the Barclays and how in that final scene, they all come together and hire him to be just their dad and to be the one who, manages the family.
Yeah, it's a Barclay Co. It's kind of like Waystar Roy Co., but on a slightly smaller scale.
So yeah, Barclay becomes professional dad. The other guy who has been on unemployment has been on it for 6 months, and George is going to stay on unemployment for a while himself too. Odyssey has no jobs.
Yeah, but it does have a
Middle America, small town Middle America is getting hollowed out by these larger national interests that might be owned by a certain Dutch fellow.
Oh, named
with a shipping
Clinton.
Concern.
Yes.
Well,
and the nefarious Dutchman, Bill
spelled
Clinton.
T-A-A-N. Yeah.
This is why they are dropping expressways down into our beloved fields, right? It's for purposes of logistics and things like that, and hollowing out the industrial core. Now,
and I wonder what's next. I wonder what's next. Further gang activity, inner city crime. Maybe this is all part of one big plan by one big guy. Because he's very tall, because he's Dutch.
Sure. I do want to talk a little bit about why I think this episode really kind of disproves, I think, Lawler's point about the nuclear family being sort of the center of America, because we see it kind of crumble and we see the cracks sort of form in it, how there is so much pressure put on George to be the provider of this family. And all nuclear families kind of have that thing where the man has to go out and get the money, right? And then the woman has to stay home and take care of the home. And it actually breaks George a little bit. We see him have this anxiety attack, and we see how unhealthy this dynamic is. But once everybody actually joins in and pitches together, then we see the family kind of rise above it. But I do think it's interesting that we see that he lets us see the cracks in the facade. Yeah. If only briefly.
Look at what this means. This ideology is that, yes, the family is the core structure, right? The skeletal aspect of society.
Right.
And if we break it down, it always starts with the family, right? It doesn't end with the family.
That's why we focus on it.
It starts there.
Yeah.
All of our societal issues, our morals as a society, our values, our legislation, our economy is all based on how much we support the family, how moral we make it, how values-based we make it, and in turn also support the free markets, because those are more diffused. Those have nothing to do with the state. Those have the support of family. Some of them are family businesses even.
Oh, we love a family business, don't we, folks?
Like the Waltons. Well, that's a good family right there. A good Arkansas family, unlike those nasty Clintons who are in government. But what this shows is like George has done everything right.
Yeah.
Right? They can't address that in this. They can't address the fact that George has done everything right, and still this is far too powerful for him. The force of capital here, that they're moving their factory, not even out of the country. It's not even NAFTA time yet. This is moving to Arkansas. This is moving a few states over.
Right.
Is too powerful. The family values don't protect you against it. The church doesn't protect against it. The salvation offered to you by our Lord Jesus Christ doesn't protect it. Now, in basic Christian theology, that's fine. That doesn't break with the theology, because suffering and persecution are all built into it.
Especially Calvinist Christianity, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in the American evangelical structure, you're supposed to be strengthened by it economically and socially and ethically.
Which is, again, like that is why Whit is the Ubermensch, right? Like he is the ultimate realization of everything that Focus holds so dear. And I mean, maybe if George just pulled himself up by his bootstraps and started a small business, then he would be able to also achieve his own American dream.
Right. I mean, this montage, very notably does not show George going over to Whit and asking Whit for a job.
Yeah.
Because Whit is not a job creator.
No.
He is for teens. But you also have to be his assistant.
He's for exactly 2 teens.
And he doesn't pay them. We know that he doesn't pay them.
Not a living wage,
He pays them a bit. Remember, going back to that very early episode, that he was like, well, how much will you pay me? It's like, I don't know, ask the other person.
Ask what they pay a clerk at the fucking mall clothing store, and I'll pay you that amount and not a penny more.
Yeah. You have to give her an incentive. Like, just be like, I'll give you $1 more, because that will get her to take the job. Whit. Anyway, it's nice to see that George is now becoming sort of the Job of Odyssey.
Yes,
and
he really is.
And I'm very excited to sort of see how they take that. I don't think they'll take it as extreme as I think Job.
No,
obviously.
he's not gonna have a puppet that does a minstrel routine like Job does.
Michael. But the fun fact about George is that he does laugh like Josh, and I clipped this because I was so struck by it.
Then if you'll show me where the coffee pot is, I'll have
Coffee?
Oh, you thought I was asking about the hugs?
Oh, get it.
Fuck, I'm so mad that there's music over that, because I would love to put that one in rotation.
Is it just a little that is
I think it's particularly when you find something like really funny, but you don't want to let the laugh out. It's sort of like you're repressed, like that is what it is, and it delighted me to no end. And also just the way they say coffee is so unhinged. Coffee, like they've never heard of it before in their goddamn lives. Ugh, this show, gift that keeps on giving.
Yes. I've Stockholm syndromed you. My people invented that in Stockholm. That's what the town is named after. Like the Ditties, you had the Stockholms who just brainwashed people.
That's their job.
Centuries.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So
that's
moving
how
on.
Gustavus Adolphus became Protestant.
Moving on. Next episode is 232, Thy Kingdom Come. As you can tell from the title, this is part of that album where they do, as was Our Daily Bread. This is all part of that album where they recap the Lord's Prayer in much the same way that we recap case studies in the pop culture of a dying empire.
We have done almost all of this album. I don't think we'll get to the entire album.
But there's a lot of material in there.
I don't really want to do the miscarriage episode. It's very sad.
Oh, God.
But I think the interesting thing about this album is that I do think this is kind of, pre-Hurlinger at least, this is one of the strongest sort of statements about what this show is. And I think in many ways it set the template for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and it was a shame because this has some, the old box art for this, before they normalized everything into their new shitty style, this was one of the worst pieces of box art they ever made for the album. Just an absolute dog shit fucking, like, it's just like a giant slab of stone that says on earth as it is in heaven, or whatever the fuck the title of the album was. And then there's like Whit standing on one of the stone letters. Horrific.
We'll post that shit to our socials.
Yeah,
You'll have a good time looking at it.
It will be a very, very small JPEG because that's all they exist in on the internet.
So,
trust me, as someone to make the posters for the show, I know how small their JPEGs are.
So this episode kicks off with an audio dramatization of the parable of the sower.
Like, it feels like a parody. It feels like they are making fun of someone else's Bible presentation.
But they're kind of making fun of themselves.
Yeah, they're telling on themselves.
But then I feel like they're not making fun of themselves.
Right.
Just Paul McCusker was feeling very boring this week.
Right.
So I didn't clip any of this because it was just really, really long and really dull. It kind of reminds me of like, I remember my mom buying some like Bible videos, and we had like the Hanna-Barbera ones, which were, it's Hanna-Barbera quality animation, but it was fine.
Sure.
But then she found some ones from the 70s that were just shit.
But like in the fun way?
Now, yes. But when you're trying to like make, find some engaging little cartoon videos for your kids, it's probably very disappointing.
Right.
Where like the burning bush just looked like there was like a branch had a little tiny like candle flame and it had 2 frames of animation that it would just jump between back and forth. And it was like really dark too. Like they did a bad job with the telecine. It was like that. It's so austere. There's no sound effects. The music is bad. Corey Burton is doing the dullest line delivery imaginable.
Yeah.
And Whit is trying to make this parable of the weeds and the wheat work.
Yeah, Whit's trying to zhuzh it up, right? He's sitting there at his DAW. He's in there. He's in Adobe Audition.
This is not digital at all. You can hear the tape reels moving.
Yeah, no, he's doing it old school. Eugene comes through, and Whit offers him the opportunity to work on the edit because it turns out he has a knack for it.
Kingdom of Heaven? Well, it's a very straightforward parable, but I keep thinking we need something behind it. Here, Newman said,
Sir?
It takes place in a field. Should I add some wind effects?
Come from?
Some enemy of mine has done this.
With all due respect, Mr. Whittaker, that may be just a tad too much.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Perhaps a gentle breeze and the sound of their feet crunching against the dry foliage on the ground, like this.
Tell the reapers to collect all the weeds.
I love that he used the Canadian pronunciation of against
Or
for some
at the
reason.
end, how about the sound of the barn door closing with a resounding bang?
My barn.
Perfect. That's exactly the reason I wanted you in here, Eugene.
Oh?
Would you mind finishing these parables? Yeah, you're so much better at it than I am.
Oh, well,
Will I be
to
compensated?
be perfectly honest, Mr. Whittaker, I don't think I can.
Whit is just pawning this work off on Eugene. It's worth noting this is actually Will Ryan's first appearance in 1993. He just wasn't around for like the first 6 months. I don't know why, but like they seem to make a big point of it by working it into the story of this, which is the Mortal Coil happened at the end of 92. Eugene appeared for their Christmas stuff, and then this long stretch of time where Will Ryan is not around playing any role, even Harlow Doyle.
But it honestly, I mean, this is a very good way, I think, dramaturgically to sort of write in an explanation for that, because he's still freaked out. And justifiably so.
He went to hell.
He went to actual hell, in case we
which
forgot.
The program somehow knew he would go to hell, which means that Whit had to program a hell variant into
he had to write
machine.
in, if Eugene hell input.
Listen, I have questions about the mechanics of the Imagination Station, but yeah, if you want to get those episodes again and get brushed up on that, go back and listen to our episode with Lev Novak. Whit fucking dies.
Yeah, but I think it is very telling about this whole episode's message about what it means to try and convert someone, right? Whit tries to play an innocent bystander and all this, but ultimately it was his machine and it was his programming that traumatized this poor fucking kid.
Yes.
And we remember we really fast forwarded through Connie's conversion. Like we didn't even play all the episodes on the show that were being flashed back to in the Connie episodes when she finally does convert.
Right.
But like there's this whole thing where Whit's like, oh, I don't want to push her too hard, but I want to give her this Bible when she goes on the bus and all that stuff. Like Whit is using his like secret agent training to try to psyop her into Christianity.
It's the power of suggestion, right? And so the thing about trying to persuade people is that you can't just outright say what it is that you want them to do. You have to cultivate a relationship. You have to put in little bits and pieces here and there, showing what your intention is, and generally being, I mean, if you really want to develop trust, you should be upfront about that, but nor should you be constantly, badgering or anything like that. And that's the approach Whit is taking here.
I also really love the nitty gritty of the podcast production in this. Like, it felt like
the what production?
The podcast.
Yeah, Whit's podcast.
Yeah,
Whit's podcast.
In 1993.
Yeah, it's called Godcast. But there's a bit where
I'm sure that exists.
But it feels the most lived in too in this. It's like you kind of cling on to the rocks of reality when you listen to Odyssey.
Here's one thing I will say too. It's really nice hearing Whit not being amazing at something.
Yeah, I didn't even clock that, but yeah, it is. He's very
not
refreshing.
A great editor. He really has to just kind of like persevere his way through it and try a million things. He doesn't have a knack, whereas Eugene does.
And so we get this point where like Connie is also trying to reach Eugene. She's young. She's a woman, so she's much dumber than Whit, and she's trying to reach Eugene with her typical 16-year-old sledgehammer approach. And so she talks to Whit while he's still struggling with his we get another parable.
Yes,
we sure Whit is talking about.
Whit is continuing to wrestle with Adobe Audition as he prepares his podcast about the parable of the mustard seed.
Okay, you guys know that this is for the radio.
Yeah.
This is tape.
Yeah, a podcast.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's tape.
It's tape.
It is tape.
It's tape.
It's tape.
It's analog. All of this is analog.
Yeah.
It's magnets and vibrations.
Magnets, how do they work?
And waves in the air. There is nothing digital about any part of this.
Right.
It's tape.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so this is what's happening here with the tape.
As a seed, it is the smallest of them all.
Whoa! Where'd it go? Oh,
look at the idiot with his muscles.
All just Corey Burton.
Biggest of all plants.
It's a little Stanley parable, isn't it?
It becomes a tree big enough for birds to come and nest in its branches.
Oh, wait a minute. This isn't right. I wanted birds, not an elephant.
He's so mad at himself.
Bulldozers. This isn't working.
Parable with a bulldozer in it?
No. I'm sorry. I mean, no. I keep pushing the wrong button.
The way he snaps at her.
Mad.
Oh, it's so funny.
God. I mean, this is why you guys know you cannot talk to me on Mondays and Tuesdays because I'm editing this show and I'm mad at you.
Right. So you feel like
and more than that, I'm mad at me. Yes.
Honestly, the truth is like I give it to like midday Wednesday before we can talk to Brian again. You need the period to like, to
I'm
remember
we're
friends.
Yeah, I'm actually getting much better at Wednesday. I'm fine. I'm totally fine all of Wednesday. But yeah, Monday and Tuesday, I've made it like, do not bring issues to me on these days because I'm the elephant situation.
Right. And you've got to stay sort of focused on that very like granular base level. And you can't be thinking about like, oh, how does this fit into the 5-year plan or whatever?
Yeah, but the thing that really pisses me off more than being interacted with at the beginning of a week.
Yeah, is it all the elephants I keep blaring mid-podcast?
It's the fact that Whit doesn't produce shows like this. You guys have heard kids radio. It's just not like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's incomprehensible sometimes.
Right.
I would go so far as to say it is almost always incomprehensible.
Yeah. Maybe that's the problem. This is too comprehensible.
Yeah.
This is just prosaic.
Yeah.
It's just going through the story. Dramaturgically, I see what McCusker is doing. Right, in the same way that Lollar was doing his little thing with the fantasy sequences that doesn't really add up to anything.
Right.
McCusker is using this as sort of an abstraction. We're supposed to be seeing the stages of Eugene in his at this particular point in his life as they are counterpointed and played alongside these other stories, these parables about the spread of the gospel and planting the seeds and seeing what that does for you.
I'll be honest, like I see it now.
It doesn't work.
But it doesn't work. I didn't listening to it. I did not grok the connection because it just isn't.
This requires a level of Bible knowledge that I just don't have, like how to equate these parables specifically and how they latch on to like Eugene's.
Yeah.
It doesn't
because
very
this
heady.
doesn't tell you the parable.
Yeah,
You have to know the parable because you only hear a fifth of it.
Yeah, this is
right?
like
you hear.
This is like those insane shows that are like the Bible Challenge or whatever, where it's like some fucking closeted gay 14-year-old boy who, you know, who
is Mormon, by the way.
Yes,
they're always Mormon.
Who has dealt with all of his issues by just like devoting himself to a comprehensive knowledge of the Bible. And it's like, so give the first 10 verses the parable of the mustard seed. And then he does that. And it's like, okay, great. Yeah. Now you need to relate this to blah, 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 blah. And he does that. And you're just like, this is the saddest thing I've ever seen.
Well, I mean,
it's like, well, that was me without the Mormonism.
Well, I mean, if it helps, the way I sort of justified it to myself was that Whit was like taking on extra audio work. Like they knew that he had this like editing station, and this is like, I don't know, in the next town over.
He's editing for a local church.
Yeah, he's like editing for a local church.
No, he's not though, because he explicitly says, I'm working on a kids radio drama.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to mean it's his kids radio, right? There could be other.
No, there's only one kids radio. There's only one kids radio.
Though. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
KYDS kids
it's just
radio.
One of those lore things. It's like kids radio. Kids is the call sign of the station.
He would never contract out like that.
No. Whit is on Fiverr. Whit is on Fiverr, and he is underbidding everyone.
By the way, Whit is fucking broke, by the way.
Just a brief point that I want to make. Very strange that the call sign is KIDS radio because...
So it's KYDS.
Sorry, KYDS radio because they're in Ohio. They're east of the Continental Divide.
It's supposed to be a fucking W.
K is only west of the Rockies. What are you doing?
Come the fuck on, guys.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah,
be a professional.
It is very interesting because we have not had that argument on mic, but we have separately had that argument like several times just sitting around.
And every time AJ's like, you don't need to be.
It doesn't matter.
No one cares. It matters,
AJ. Okay.
You know how there's train guys? There's radio guys. And the thing is, we ain't the ones been teaching them. They're the ones been teaching us.
I'm quitting this show.
I always knew it'd be an Odyssey one. Deep down, I always knew.
So
it's probably going to be the next one.
Hey, I could finish the dishes if you want to go back in to help him.
I'm sorry, Miss Kendall, but there really isn't time.
There isn't time, or you don't want to make time?
I beg your pardon?
I mean, be sensitive. You just sort of haven't been around much, you know? Like, you kind of do your work, and then, you know, you're sort of...
Forgive me, Miss Kendall, but I don't think I've ever been in my life.
I mean, you're out of here like a bullet.
That seems like a fun recording dynamic,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
Them going at each other
You
is
can
very
tell
lovely.
that Will Ryan and Katie Lee just have a ton of fun with each other.
They really do.
You know?
The thing is, too, like, it's not like that's a great line. It's just that they are having so much fun with it that it becomes fun.
Well, it is yes-anding too, because he's mimicking the exact sound that she made, which makes it feel like a much closer personal dynamic. Like these two, you buy that these are people who work next to each other all day, every day for a truly maniacal landlord.
And
but he's broke because he's paying their salaries.
Connie fails her persuasion check here, right?
Yes.
And Eugene is just like, I don't want to talk about it.
You should talk about it.
Should or shouldn't is in the proverbial eye of the beholder. However, if I were to talk about it, I'd only say that my experience in the imagination station was likely the result of weariness and anxiety brought about by Mr. Whittaker's failing health.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean...
Right. And as a man of higher learning, I wouldn't allow that experience to lead me to draw any significant conclusions.
Meaning what?
Meaning that I cannot oblige you in what you want.
What do you think I want?
You want me to become a believer in Christianity. I can't.
Why not?
Because it is a closed issue for me.
Like we talked about earlier with like the respect that Phil Lollar showed Connie's mom.
Yeah.
He would not be able to write this.
No.
Paul McCusker has the ability to write this, to write a character who knows precisely what his deal is and why he is not going to be a Christian in this context.
Yeah, no, he's not chunky. We don't need to figure out what his whole deal is.
And it's also one of those things, because McCusker has jumped around faiths so much, I guess.
Right.
It is almost like, okay, this is a guy who I feel like he gets Eugene on sort of a very fundamental level, and he's a guy who has to sit down and read all the books in order to like kind of figure out the theory that would then get him into it.
Right.
And honestly, it was very nice to see, because I actually think, at least in the terms of like what I listened to of Connie's conversion, I think they kind of did her character dirty in order to get her to the place of just believing.
Yeah, they had to move fast on that. And I think at that point, too, they just weren't as confident in the writing and the characterization. You know what I mean? Like, I think that if they were to drop a Connie Kendall in around episode 200, her arc would be well drawn, you know?
Yeah. And much, much more complicated, certainly. And they allow that for Eugene, which is lovely, because I think they also bet on the fact that audiences like Eugene enough as a character, and how could you not? It's Will fucking Ryan.
Right.
That they'll wait for him to convert. Like, for all like the anxious kids like y'all, when you were sitting around listening to these tapes, we were just like,
absolutely.
Well, when's he going to do it?
When's he going to get saved? Yeah.
I mean, but it's the will they, won't they, right? Of Odyssey. When will Eugene get saved? And I guess soon. I'd imagine soon.
You have no idea, AJ.
Yeah,
you have no fucking idea.
I'm very excited. But yeah, it's interesting too, because, you know, now being a little bit older, and to your point about like reading, you know, doing the reading and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It is something that I now feel more of an attachment to. The idea of like, if I am confronted with a problem, I kind of want to do the research on it, right? And that's not a process that can be
of this
forced.
podcast.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I think that like we kind of do a little exegesis every week on a piece of material. And for me personally, it has better helped me understand how I view the world around me. And
certainly. Not me. I was already really smart.
Yeah, well,
that's true. I mean,
and from what I've heard from our listeners, it sounds like has helped a lot of people as well with that process for them. So I think that's a good thing. And what this episode doesn't do is go, oh, Eugene, you're going to go off and read those books. Yeah, okay, fucking, you know, making the J-O motion. Instead...
Right, because Paul McCusker has a deep respect for the intellectual, and we should mention what the books are, right? Eugene is reading St. Augustine,
right,
which is what prompted our discussion about those rowdy
about
high schoolers that stole all of AJ's pears.
Yeah, all my pears.
I mean, Connie literally runs into him at the library and knocks his books out of his hands. It's like, oh, you're reading all of these.
He's reading like really complicated books, contemporary and, you know, ancient, and like a lesser writer, Phil Lollar, would have him read G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis. And this book wasn't out yet, but like Lee Strobel, you know?
The Case for Christ,
yeah. Because like you were pointing out, AJ, at this point, McCusker is already living overseas. He married a British woman, moved to the UK.
Oh.
He writes from the UK for like a decade or so.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when he moved, but I know it was around the time that Dave Griffin, Jimmy Barclay's voice changed, because he talked about getting a call.
Was he in London then, or do you know?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I think it was London, yeah. But so he started going to an Anglican church.
Okay.
And you can see these are the books that he is actively reading.
Right.
And then eventually Paul McCusker becomes a Catholic.
Yes.
Quite a bit later, like in the 2010s.
Yeah. What a way to deal with your homesickness, right? To write about an all-American, you know, town of Odyssey while you're abroad. I could definitely see. I guess maybe that's why his episodes are. I mean, he's a very good. He's a much better writer, I think, overall than Lollar. But there is sort of like there is a yearning that is in a lot of his stuff that now makes a lot more sense.
AJ, one day I'm gonna find some of his fucking plays, and they're just gonna appear in your home. It's gonna be like a Skinamarink situation. It's gonna pop into place.
Yeah, and it is nice because my home is already upside down.
Oh good.
And it has no doors or windows.
So I'm
so cold.
On being confronted by Connie at the library, Eugene's like, look, I'll level with you, right? The reason that I didn't want you to know about, you know, where I'm at, the fact that I'm reading these books or anything else is that I need time and I'm trying to make it fit together. And if you had known what I was doing, you would just be really annoying about it.
Yeah, you'd just keep pushing the, well, just become a Christian already thing.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, like, that's not going to help him at that point.
Right.
That's not going to help him think.
Right.
It's just going to be pressure.
But of course, and this is an important point too, a big cornerstone of the evangelical tradition is that it's not enough to just think. You got to feel it. It's a God thing, right?
Yeah.
If you're spending too much time intellectualizing it and getting up in your own head, you will ultimately not be like hearing God's call, which is basically just
At some point, you have to abandon the logic because God's logic is higher than yours, and it's something that you are not going to be able to fathom. God is apparently, which is counter to a lot of historical Christian belief that God has created a universe that you are not supposed to be able to fathom, rather than you are created in God's image to be able to find that.
And
truth,
this is something that is very different, obviously, from some strains of Christianity. It's very different from most strains of Judaism, but evangelical Christianity specifically, the primary focus is on that one-to-one personal connection with a personal savior. And the thing about personal relationships is that they are first and foremost emotional in nature.
I have a question for both of you because, again, I'm not as familiar, or like, I guess these parables were not drilled into my head, and there's some pretty obscure ones in here. What the fuck is the kingdom of heaven is like yeast?
Oh, so the kingdom of heaven is like yeast.
That's the silliest thing I've ever heard.
These are two stories that are placed right next to each other. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast, and the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. That one you might be a little bit more familiar with.
I do know mustard seed because I did a play at a theater that we won't mention on this podcast where I had to scream, "Remember the mustard seed!"
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, good. So you do remember the mustard seed.
These are two sides of the same coin, right? These are small ingredients that make a big impact.
Yeah. Right, because a mustard seed is like this little tiny thing. Josh, I'm sure you had plenty of Sunday school classes where the fucking teacher handed out a mustard seed to everybody.
Absolutely. I feel like we've talked about that on this show before.
It's like the size of a human egg cell, right? But then it grows into a very large tree. The same thing with yeast. It's very, very small, but you only use a little tiny bit of it, and your bread's going to get big.
Well, I mean, and that's
so that's what that is.
The thing about this,
it's not much of a parable. It's just a very simple analogy.
Right. But the thing about this episode and the way they structure it is that you just keep hearing the same line. The kingdom of heaven is like blah. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast. The kingdom of heaven is like a woman in her hotel room. Her kingdom's going to come. And it's just, it really like,
We're shaking our heads.
It really just like it causes the mind to go in on itself because eventually they stop meaning anything, like they do with Eugene, right? Like, you can't make the connection between
certainly
these
to
and
a
his
more
journey.
outside listener.
Yeah.
It means something to me, and it means something to Josh because we have the full context of the entire story.
Right. But because again, it's about audience, right?
Because this episode isn't about the Eugenes.
No,
this episode is about the Joshes and Bryans who are trying to convert you.
That's
AJ.
exactly right. It's giving us
that's
tips.
the framework I was missing.
It's giving us tips for what to do and how to think about it because Eugene, in this case, his own faith, right, the kingdom of heaven growing in him, is at this point in time somewhere between a mustard seed and a full-grown mustard tree.
Yeah, and he needs to read some Milton for a while and then find out that he's actually gay for Satan. But then Whit does this this is another thing that it just fails. Whit tries to do this Plato's cave comparison, right? Where he's talking about the Lord's reason and our reason and how, there are things in heaven and earth that are not dreamt of in your philosophy, Eugene.
Right.
And he plays the sound effects in the studio and he's like, see, it's like we're outside. I could change it to any place. And what's weird is that you don't get transported.
Right.
When you're listening to this. It's
very
almost
Brechtian,
too good.
Right?
You feel like you are in the studio.
Yes.
Like you always hear like the tape or whatever, and like the sound is shaped in such a way that it sounds like it's in a room with you rather than creating the. And I think that's on purpose. I think it's a bad choice.
I don't know. I mean, it does feel, like I was saying, very Brecht, very Bertolt Brecht, where it's like, this is the construct,
Thank you
right?
for pronouncing that correctly. Yeah.
You're welcome. I thank Kevin Sorbo for, helping me with my pronunciation.
I thank the great state of Oregon.
As we all should.
Ever since that incident in the Imagination Station,
hold on, Eugene. Maybe you better tell me about that incident. All I've heard has been secondhand.
Well, it's difficult to explain.
So you can still hear those waves
I know that your
there.
life after death program gave you an experience of joy and reunion.
But not for you.
No.
Because you programmed it
In many
that way,
ways, it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had. It was as if I were completely separated from everyone and everything. As if I were thoroughly alone. As if life had absolutely no meaning and I was non-existent in a burning darkness. Connie said I saw a glimpse of hell, and in many ways, I want to believe her.
Believe it, Eugene.
However, that experience isn't enough to make me want to rush into the arms of Christianity for protection, to wax poetically for a moment. That's why I've been researching and studying. I want to confirm or deny my experience.
And so I think the way that the sound of the waves interacts with that is really interesting because it's like, you know, they're not on a beach, but there's a part of your brain that's like, they're on a beach. But it's not, it doesn't seem to be in service of a greater point about the nature of narratives,
because again, like, Whit is trying to do, because in Plato's cave, everyone sees reflections and thinks they're the real thing.
Right.
And then Whit takes Eugene out of the booth, walks him through Whit's End, takes him outside, and they hear the birds and the breeze and the leaves and the grass and the cars.
Right.
And
that
everything.
happens after this clip.
Yeah. And it's just inert. It's just dramatically they haven't nailed.
Yeah.
Like I can see, like, if I'm diagramming it, if I'm listening to it and taking notes, I see what you're trying to do. Otherwise, this episode has no impact. And I certainly really don't remember listening to this episode at all.
Maybe a lot of it comes down to the sound design, right? Like if the
the
waves
also a part of it, but
I think the sound design delivers what it's supposed to be delivering here, and it's just the writing is.
It's the way the things work in tandem, right? Where like if the sound of the waves and so forth was kind of like tinny and not quite, sounding good, and then they go outside and now they have left Plato's cave and it's like, whoa, I hear so many great things, and you really kind of throw the kitchen sink at it. It might have been a little showy, but I do think it would have landed better.
I think it should have even been that, like, it's a perfect illusion. Like, I'm able to totally create this thing. We're here. And then they go out. But then maybe that creates a question, which I would like, of have they actually left the booth? What's going on now?
It's like the beginning of Prey, where you're inside the looking glass, right?
Yeah. It's again, it's like McCusker's trying to take a big swing the same way that he did by sort of layering it with the parables, with the ideas of these parables, and the way that the gospel lands within somebody, and the way that a thought can grow within them, just as a mustard tree would grow.
Right.
But just none of it comes together. There is some nice, respectful dialogue that happens in here, but we all know, of course, the goal is to get this fictional character's soul saved, so that the imagination station, which knows if you're a Christian or not, won't put him in hell again.
I also think that this dialogue would work a lot better if we got new information from Eugene in terms of like what
all of this is.
What if he says the same stuff? Whereas
he said this exact thing during the mortal coil.
Yeah.
And like 3 of the dialogues in this episode are just like Connie talks to Whit and says, Eugene's been blah, 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 blah. And then she goes to Eugene and says, Eugene, you've been blah, 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 blah. Like word for word.
And if you're going to do that, you might as well just like do a flashback and use clips, which is a tool they will use later to, I think, greater effect.
Yeah, I also took the note that this episode feels inert, Brian, and it doesn't, because it is a placeholder, right? I think there is maybe value in that, like, if you are trying to convert someone, there will be days that feel like this, where it does feel like their resistance is the exact same excuse they've been using over and over and over again. But, like, it doesn't make it a good episode to listen to. It doesn't make it fun. I took the note. I zoned out almost entirely for the entire last section, and I regret nothing because nothing
you didn't miss anything.
Happened. I did also briefly feel that maybe it was Hal Smith talking to Will Ryan and not Whit talking to Eugene briefly because of what they were doing with the Brechtian like distancing. Like, are we just going to fully do this and be like, hey, we're in a radio drama right now? Like, are they going to take it to like that full extreme?
And then they talk out to you, the listener, and say, which I think most of these would be more interesting.
But they're not going to break the frame like that. That's just not in the nature of how this show operates.
No, they're trapped in a family portrait. So what do we learn about dads?
You gotta have them.
Gotta have dads. Gotta have my dads.
Can't live with them. Can't.
Yeah. No. It really is true that I gotta have my pops. Like that's.
I don't know. We've learned nothing in these episodes. This is
mostly bummers, actually. Yeah. So this is a real kind of downer week.
I guess that's more about. Yeah, what I should be telling you, AJ, is we're gonna fall further.
Oh, okay, sure.
George Barkley is now embarking on a journey.
Oh. into hell.
And he's going to change. He's going to become a very, very different man.
Oh. Okay.
And let's all of us hope that there isn't a run on the old savings and loan. Because it's not your money that's in here.
Eyes are currently popping out of his socket.
It's in Dale Jacobs' house.
No. It's in Dale Jacobs' house. It's in Wits End. I mean, most of it's in Wits End. He insisted on it.
So now we have reached the end of our episode. And so I just wanted to say that you can, if you want to listen to more of our stuff, if you've enjoyed this episode, we are on Patreon. Patreon.com/worstofall gives you access to all of our good shit. Every other week, we got a premium episode. You can get those for $5 a month, or I Hate You for $10 a month.
And if you want to listen to our recent premium episodes, of course, we did one on Mr. Beast.
Yes, we did.
That is very popular.
I like that guy. Very charitable, that Mr. Beast.
God. So yeah, go to patreon.com/worstofall to get signed up for that. For me, this was one of the most interesting episodes so far, where the tensions between the philosophies that these writers have and the actual implications of those philosophies were in direct conflict, right? And so all of these episodes, every single one of them in a way was like, you can't land the plane because everything that you have put into it up until this point seems to be in conflict with where you want to go. But the thing is about evangelical Christianity, that whenever you come across one of those strange logical conundrums or the things that make you go, maybe I want to dig into this a little bit more, is that you run the fuck away from it as fast as possible. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
See you next week.